My name is Clara, and I'm 67 years old. It was a sunny Tuesday morning when I reached for my handbag by the door, expecting to head out with my daughter and granddaughter to vote, like we had always done together. But this time, everything changed. Mom, we already voted, my daughter said, standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed. You don't need to come anymore. I blinked, confused. But I've gone every year, since I was 21. My granddaughter, barely 19, rolled her eyes and said it loud, louder than necessary. Let's be real. It's time to let the new generation decide. You should be home, watching TV, not dragging yourself to polling stations. The words slapped me harder than any argument we'd ever had. I stood there, heart pounding in my chest. Not from anger, but from something heavier, like a quiet door closing. No one said anything after that. They grabbed their keys and left, leaving behind the scent of their perfume and the silence of a house that no longer felt like mine. I sank into the armchair by the window, the same one where I had cradled my daughter as a baby. And now, I sat alone. My fingers trembled as I held my voter ID. It was worn, edges curled, ink faded. But to me, it was sacred, a symbol of voice, of presence, and now, it was nothing more than a relic in the eyes of my own blood. The house had changed, not in walls or furniture, but in spirit. Once filled with noise, arguments over dinner, laughter echoing down the hallway. Now it was still. My husband had passed 7 years ago, and since then, my daughter moved back in with her child after a messy divorce. It was supposed to be temporary, but temporary became years. Now, every corner of my home bore their presence. Her shampoo in my bathroom, her digital bills on my coffee table, her daughter's loud music vibrating through the thin bedroom walls. They never asked, and I never complained. Because that's what mothers do. We make room. But lately, I felt more like a guest than the owner. They rolled their eyes when I shared an opinion. They whispered when I entered the room. And my stories, those full of life and lessons, were dismissed with sighs and quick glances at their phones. I tried to understand. The world was faster now, money tighter. They talked about investments, banks, credit cards, things that made my head hurt. They spoke of building generational wealth, as if what I gave them wasn't enough, as if love didn't count anymore. Every Sunday, I'd bake sweetbread, hoping to draw us back to the table. Sometimes they came, most times they didn't. One afternoon, I overheard my granddaughter whisper, "She just doesn't get it. She thinks her way still matters." And my daughter replied, "She's stuck in a time that's gone. We can't carry her forever." They didn't know I was standing by the stairs. They didn't see the tears I blinked back as I turned away. That weekend, something inside me shifted. I didn't bake the sweetbread. I didn't set the table. And I didn't ask where they were going when they left in a hurry. Dressed in luxury brands I never understood. Purses more expensive than my monthly pension. I stayed quiet, but the silence was not surrender. It was observation. The next morning, I checked the kitchen drawer where I used to keep emergency money. Gone. I opened my late husband's box of old papers. The deed to the house? Missing. I sat down slowly, trying to control the throb building in my chest. "Clara," I whispered to myself. They wouldn't, but doubt had already set in. That evening, I asked calmly over dinner, "Did one of you take the house papers from the office?" My daughter didn't flinch. She took a sip of wine and said, "We're just organizing things, Mom. It's time to think about the future. Your future." My future? I asked. Yes, she said, leaning forward. Retirement homes have better care. You can't be alone forever. My fork clattered against the plate. I'm not alone, I said. I'm home. You're holding us back, she whispered, just loud enough. You're sitting on value that we could invest. You have no idea how hard it is out there. I stood up. My legs trembled, but I stood tall. You think I don't know struggle, I said. I buried your father with my own hands. I paid this house brick by brick while working 2 jobs. Don't talk to me about sacrifice. But they weren't listening. They were already looking at their phones again. Days passed, but I couldn't sleep. I began noticing things, small, strange things. Letters from a bank I didn't recognize. A man's voice on speakerphone saying, "Yes, the equity transfer is in process." Equity? I waited until they left one afternoon and walked into my own office, a space I hadn't entered in weeks. My documents had been reorganized. The safe was gone. The photo of me and my husband replaced with a framed quote about new beginnings. I opened her laptop. A document sat open. Reverse mortgage proposal, Clara M. I felt my breath leave me. They were turning my life into cash. That night, I didn't ask. I didn't accuse. I prayed, harder than I had in years. Lord, I whispered, holding my wedding ring tight in my fist, show me what to do. You said, even to your old age and gray hairs, I am He. I am He who will sustain you. Please sustain me now. The next morning, I visited the local bank alone. I met with a man named Elijah, calm voice, kind eyes. I told him everything. He checked the files, confirmed my name was being used, but without proper consent. They're trying to push you into a financial corner, he said. Do you want me to help you stop it? I looked out the window, eyes burning. Yes, I said. Help me take my life back. When I got home, I didn't speak. I waited for the day the notary was supposed to arrive. When he did, I was ready, with Elijah beside me, and my own lawyer at the door. My daughter's face turned pale. What are you doing? She hissed. I'm protecting what's mine, I said, standing tall, and what your father left for me to defend. She didn't fight right away. She just stared at me, silent, eyes full of fury. My granddaughter stood beside her, arms crossed, scoffing. This is ridiculous, she muttered. You're paranoid. But Elijah laid the documents on the table. Everything was initiated without her consent. This could be considered fraud. That word, fraud, hung in the air like smoke. My daughter's voice cracked. I was just trying to help. We were going to use the money for everyone. College, a new car, maybe even renovate this place. You never asked me, I said, voice low but steady. You didn't even see me anymore. She dropped into the chair, covering her face. I can't do this alone, Mom, she said, suddenly shaking. Everything is so expensive. I'm drowning in debt. The credit card, the loans. I thought maybe You thought I wouldn't notice, I interrupted. You thought I was already gone. Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't move to comfort her. Not yet. Because the truth needed to land. You told me to sit at home and watch TV, like my time was over. A long silence followed, and then my granddaughter, so full of fire days ago, sank slowly onto the couch, suddenly small. I didn't mean it, Grandma, she whispered. I didn't know what you carried, what you built. I looked at both of them. No, you didn't. Then I walked to the mantel and placed the wedding photo back in its rightful place. This house is not for sale. My life is not alone to cash in. And for the first time in months, I felt breath return to my lungs. That night, no one ate dinner. The house sat in silence, heavy with everything that had been said and everything that couldn't be unsaid. My daughter didn't speak to me for days. She stayed locked in her room, ashamed, maybe angry. I didn't know. But I didn't chase her. For the first time in years, I stopped bending to keep peace. Instead, I began reclaiming the small things. I moved my photos back to the living room. I took down the motivational quotes that weren't mine. I reopened my old recipe book and baked the sweetbread for myself. On the fourth morning, I found an envelope at the table, a note from my daughter. I canceled everything. I'm sorry, I was scared, and I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that. If you'll still have us, I want to rebuild, not just this house. Us. I held the letter with trembling hands, the scent of her perfume still on the paper. She had never apologized before. That night, she came into the kitchen and asked if she could help me cook. "Can you cut onions without crying?" I teased. She laughed, a real one. For the first time in years, we stood side by side at the stove, steam rising, hearts thawing. Later, my granddaughter came down, eyes red. "I got a part-time job," she said. "I'm not going to rely on anyone's name but mine anymore." I looked at her, surprised. She added, "But I'd still like your sweetbread recipe." "Someday." I smiled. Maybe. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Weeks passed. The tension softened, like the last snow melting into spring. My daughter began waking up earlier, helping with house chores, sitting with me on the porch. We didn't talk about banks or credit cards anymore. We talked about faith, about her childhood, about how scared she really was. "I thought you were unshakable," she said one night. "But I forgot you bled too." I nodded. "And I forgot you were still learning, just like me." My granddaughter, now juggling work and online college, came home tired but proud. She brought her own groceries, helped with bills when she could. One afternoon, she burst through the door holding a small envelope. "Grandma," she shouted, "look, I voted. On my own this time." She handed me her sticker, beaming. It wasn't about agreeing with everything. It was about doing something that matters. I smiled and placed the sticker on the fridge, right next to a photo of me in my 30s, standing outside the voting booth in a floral dress. "You're learning," I said, "and you're leading." Church became my sanctuary again, not just for prayer, but for purpose. I began leading a small group for women like me, those pushed aside, overlooked, silenced by time. We shared stories, losses, victories. One of them said, "You reminded me that I'm not invisible." And that's when I knew. My voice still mattered, not just inside this house, but out there, in the world. Like the Bible says, "She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come." I finally understood what that meant, because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was growing again. The days began to settle into rhythm. Until one morning, I received a letter addressed to me, but in a name I hadn't used since before marriage. Inside was a legal notice, a credit default, tied to a loan I never signed, a loan taken in my maiden name, with forged documents. Panic gripped me. I rushed to the bank. Elijah was waiting. He reviewed the notice, frowning. "This wasn't your daughter," he said. "This came from a different source, someone with access to your old records." I felt my stomach twist. Only one person could have had those files. My niece, a paralegal who visited last year and borrowed my birth certificate for a family tree project. She'd always seemed kind. She'd also asked a lot about my finances. The betrayal stung differently, not out of greed, but out of calculation. Elijah acted fast, connecting me with a legal team that specialized in elder fraud. While they prepared the documents, I sat in my garden, phone in hand, heart heavy. Was this what aging meant now? Layers of trust being peeled away? My family? I called my daughter. She didn't hesitate. We'll fix this together. And she meant it. She called her lawyer. She stood beside me at every appointment. She told the police everything she knew, even if it meant dragging more family into the light. We were no longer three broken women under one roof. We were one house, united. And as the court date approached, I didn't feel old. I felt armored, because this time I wasn't standing alone. The courtroom was small, but the tension inside was thick. My niece sat across from me, eyes cold, flanked by a lawyer she could barely afford. She wouldn't look at me, but I looked at her, not with hate, but with sorrow. The judge read through the case. Elijah spoke on my behalf, detailing the forged signatures, the fraudulent loans, the danger to my home. Then it was my turn. I stood, hands steady, voice clear. My name is Clara, I said. I'm 67, and I've worked for everything I have. My house, my peace, my dignity. I came here not just to protect what's mine, but to say that I am not invisible. The courtroom was silent. Even my niece lowered her eyes. I forgave things I should have spoken about. I allowed silence to take over where truth should have lived. But today, I choose truth. The judge nodded slowly, then gave his ruling. All accounts frozen. All transactions reversed. Assets protected under Clara's sole name. Relief hit me like a wave. But it wasn't just about winning. It was about being seen. My daughter squeezed my hand. When we walked out of the courtroom, I didn't feel old or left behind. I felt whole, complete. Outside, reporters stood waiting, but I didn't stop to speak. I didn't need headlines. I had already reclaimed my voice. That night, we baked sweetbread again. 3 generations, 1 kitchen. My granddaughter asked, "So, when do I learn the recipe?" I smiled. "Tonight."